Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Building Bigger Lives podcast. I'm Michael Regan, along with my fabulous co-host, Kathryn Peterson. And as we like to do on a regular basis, we've invited a guest in today's episode that we hope you're going to be excited to hear from. You may know about Jason Maida, you may not, but one thing is for sure, this guy is a powerhouse of mortgage education information. And if you are an entrepreneur outside of the housing industry, don't tune out. You're going to find out that this guy has some really, really great insights on how he's built his business that might give you an opportunity to apply those in a different business, even if you are outside of mortgage lending and real estate. So stay tuned, stay engaged. But before I ramble any further and introduce our guest, let me first welcome my co-host, Kathryn. Great to see you today.
Great to be here. I'm excited for this one after reading the pre-notes.
Yeah, Jason's got a lot of notes worth reading. Here's what I need you all to know is Jason comes into today's podcast as a true production leader on a national level. But what I hope you'll pay attention to are not the big numbers, because the big numbers tend to grab a lot of spotlight. Pay attention to the details, because this is a guy who, back when I met him, had also recently read Atomic Habits, and we both shared a really clear passion around loving and embracing the disciplines. What I found out as I began to work with Jason a few years ago is he first applied those as a performance athlete and then translated those into a lot of what he's doing in the real estate space. So it's really interesting to hear how he's been able to do that. I look forward to sharing that story with you. But without any further ado, Jason, welcome to the frame. Great to have you today.
Thank you, Michael and Kathryn. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you, and I hope our audience that is listening on Apple or Spotify or Audible might for fun, go check us out on the YouTube channel, and you'll get to see Jason. He's got a beautiful Mortgage Educate logo behind him, because I think,
Right.
Jason, that's where I'd like to start. That
Okay.
seems to be the heart of everything that you're doing. Is it seems to be that this is not
Yeah.
self-promotion, this is not glory and ego, this is education rooted.
Yeah.
Where does that passion for education come from, Jason? I mean, you're clearly an educated guy, but where's your passion come from?
Yeah. Well, I think, as I have the opportunity to work with clients all across the country and hear their concerns and fears around home ownership, it really kind of like set in motion for me the idea that there's a missing link in our industry of really helping educate our community on which is really going to be their largest purchase or financial decision they ever decide to make. And so as I had the opportunity to meet with all of these clients, I just started to come to me like there is truly an opportunity to educate people and really help give them the tools and resources they need to make an informed decision. So it was birthed out of that. And we essentially started grassroots with 1 to 2 people in a little hotel room or conference room in Sacramento, California. And it kind of just continued to grow organically into what we know today, which is, over 10,000 people being educated on an annual basis.
Okay, we'll definitely want to get to that piece of the puzzle, but I want to stay back at the origin story. So, as
Yeah.
you're passionate about bringing that level of clarity into the conversation for these clients, tell us about your personal story. I mean, did you grow up feeling really clear on a lot of these financial acumen issues, or did someone
Yeah.
have to share those with you? Where did you first start learning about the difference between just having a place to live and
Yeah.
actually the asset value of this home?
Well, it goes back quite a ways, back into my like pre-college years, which my dad came up in consumer finance, and he actually put me to work in one of his offices, and I was doing the dot matrix printer, pulling credit reports for him, or building shelves for massive amounts of personal loan files that they stored at the office back in the days. And, I would just kind of hear what was happening in these offices. And, this was, back in the 80s, right? So it was just a different world of finance. And, I just started to pick up on some of the terminology that I would hear, from, my dad and his employees. And, I just started to kind of learn more and more and more. And then, after college, or kind of during college, I did some internships within that organization and just started to pick up on things. And obviously, being new to just the consumer credit world myself, I just try to apply as much as I learned in those kind of settings to my own life.
Wow. I think you and I are going to have a lot in common, and I'm so excited to hear your story now that we've started. So, when you're kind of in that financial world, let's call
Yeah.
it, you're getting these little pieces and parts,
Yeah.
but sometimes there's people who say, "Oh, I now know that that's not what I want to ever get near," right?
Yeah.
Or, "Hey, I'm going to lean into that and make a decision to kind of get focused into that world." But I feel like the path is never a straight line. So I'd
Yeah.
love to hear how you got from kind of hanging out around it to
Yeah.
actually saying, "Hey, this is what I really want to do." And did you end up working in consumer finance for a while, or how did that
Yeah.
path evolve
Yeah.
from there?
Yeah, for sure. So after school, I came back to the consumer finance industry because that's kind of what I knew as I was going into school. And I was on an accelerated management program. They kind of put you on this trajectory to manage one day. And, part of that had sales goals and whatnot. And, this is back in, the sales connection was all over the phone, right? And so I'm working with clients on working on their personal loan and having discussions about, benefits of a loan. And I really enjoyed the interaction with the client. And I was like, this is fun. I feel like I'm making an impact. Now, keep in mind, consumer finance back then, we're talking 20 plus interest rate options, which, even higher at times. So it was a challenge for sure. But I think that relationship met a need for the client at where they were financially in their lives. And so I did have an opportunity at that point to really, as young as I was and learning finance myself, to really provide some education. And it started sparking for me some thoughts of like, maybe this is something that I really enjoy because I love, you know, just the interaction I have with the client. But I'm also, I'm a competitive person too. So I enjoyed reaching production goals. And so it started to kind of like click a little bit for me at that time.
Jason, as you're in that season of your career, what was your vision as a younger man in this business? If you could go back 5, 10 years ago, what did you see in the future that maybe led you down the path in which Kathryn and I get to intersect all these years
Yeah.
later? What did you see as a younger man in this business?
Well, as a younger man in this business, to be fully transparent, I was about survival. I was a young father and trying to take care of a young family at that time. It was really just, trying to make sure I can get to that point. I really didn't have a clarity on vision at that point. It was just survival mode. And, I was head down, just stay disciplined, do the right thing, hit your goals, take good care of people, and then, hopefully the fruits of my labors will come together. Um, as I continued to grow in my career and I ultimately kind of reached a senior executive level at the consumer finance model that I was a part of, it became clear to me that I could do something bigger in this industry. And I always had the dream of my own mortgage company. Like that was the big vision. And, I would always like, be doing something thinking about, okay, what would I name my mortgage company? And this is what I do. These are the processes I have in place. This is the product software I offer. So it always was something that went through my head, even though I was working in a different model at that time. So, and then, I'm sure we'll talk about more about the story here a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, that's how it kind of like, I would say in my mid to late 20s, I was like, I know there's something bigger for me in this industry. And, I'm going to figure it out. But ultimately, I wanted to have my own mortgage company. That was kind of the big goal.
So now that I know a little bit of the background and a little bit of the middle, but
Yeah.
that I don't think talks to what you're doing now and how you're impacting people's lives now. So how did
Yeah.
that transition into kind of all these people that you're touching every year?
Yeah.
Because I think that is a little bit of a left-hand turn. I mean, yes, it's still in the
Hmm.
same industry, but not every mortgage person is doing this. And I want to make sure we spend some good time kind of figuring out that
Yeah.
unique position that you now have.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to kind of, as I'm having these one-on-ones with clients, like just seeing how I wanted to be different in the industry, and I feel like we are built differently. And I think when I'm having these conversations with clients, I'm like, nobody's exploring credit on an in-depth level with clients. Nobody's strategically planning home ownership for them. Nobody's explaining the process and workflow of home ownership. And more importantly, nobody's taking the time to help share with them resources that are available to them. They think they just have to take this one product. And as I'm kind of going through those conversations with clients, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, there's some gaps here in our industry. And that kind of what, kind of made me make that left-hand turn was like, okay, I think we can do something here that can kind of change the shape of how maybe our community looks at homeownership.
All right, but I want to learn more about that, Jason. What's the stronger pull when you make that shift? Is it I get to stand out because no one else is doing this? This gives me a unique value proposition. And or does it combine with I see the lack of information and opportunity for these first time home buyers or these early step up home buyers because
Hmm.
the model just isn't serving them in a meaningful way? Which pull was stronger for you, the need to separate or the need to help, or was it some blend of the both?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of blend of both, but I think stronger was the need to help. I think as I started the grassroots, home buying workshops with 1 to 5 people, I
Mhm.
saw some really ahas on the faces of my guests because this is pre-COVID, right? So they're right there face to face with me. We're in a hotel conference room. And I mean, just the little things that us in our industry just take for granted, concepts, terminology. When I saw the looks of my guests that were at these classes, I was like, oh yeah, there's a big opportunity here for us. And, as we're having these conversations and, of course, there's a presentation that we provided, but as I'm having Q&A with our guests, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, there's opportunity here for us. Now, how we translate that to production, that was kind of the next step, which, needed to unfold at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Kathryn, the reason I'm asking Jason this is I also see this in you. I know all the classes you teach with United Way. I know you share a similar ideology. The execution is perhaps a little different, and maybe the two of you can share some notes on that. But what's really interesting to me is that there are folks out there in the housing industry that do care at this deep level. And that's why I wanted to ask that question, Jason, to
Yeah.
dig into it, because I know that someone might, just translate that as, oh, well, the guy saw an opportunity to differentiate himself and he went for it. No, yes, but it was rooted in I saw the eyes of these people when I'm in these classes,
Mm.
one at a time. And Kathryn, I know you get that same view when you host at the United Way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, but I also think it takes a special person to see that because we forget, like you said, what we already know because we've known
Hmm.
it for so long that you kind of forget, like, oh, they don't know what amortization means, or they don't know
Right.
what those things are. And
Yeah.
sometimes you even talk at this level when we really have to take it down here. So I think
Yeah.
it takes a special person to hear that and say, okay, what can I do to serve that specific need?
Yeah.
And I think one of my curiosity questions for you is how have the classes evolved? Like, I know, at least for me, when I started versus how I am now, luckily I had somebody who is involved tightly with curriculum come and like listen to the classes and adjust them and teach me some things.
Yeah.
But I know that that's taken me a long time and maybe I'm a slower learner. But how have you evolved those classes
Yeah.
over time as you've seen the need and adjusted your own view and your
Yeah.
own, I think, like method to do that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it goes back a little bit. If I'm to look at where we started, so we started with 1 to 5 attending classes, and then that was built upon a partnership with one of my original strategic partners with a local university here in Sacramento, UC Davis. They were instrumental in working with their HR department and their on campus to help kind of like spread the word for us. And that was, that's part of where some of the dots connected with some of our, strategic partnerships that we have today. But those were, grassroots quarterly classes, 1 to 5 people. And then the word started to travel like, you should see this guy. He knows what he's talking about. And it's a really impactful, workshop. We would serve them lunch and it started to grow. And, by the end of a year, we had not just 5 people, we had 20 people. And then the next year it was 30 to 40 people. And it kind of started to build up. And then, we got to a point ultimately just before the pandemic that we were probably close to 150 to 200 people live in person. Our largest class was in Santa Monica with USC and the young alumni down there. I think we had 350 people that wanted to come listen to what we had to say. And then the pandemic hit, And I remember we had 200 people signed up for a Sacramento class, right down the street here from my office. Later on that day, after we got the final signups, Governor Gavin Newsom says, "Hey, the maximum of people can meet in person is 50," and we're just scrambling like, "What do we do?" We said, "Okay, we got to pivot. We have to pivot to a virtual setting. We want to get the education out to our community. We need a delivery system." And lo and behold, that's where kind of we started shifting our platform to Zoom and where we are today.
Yeah, where we are today, though, is miles away from even that pivot point, Jason.
Yeah.
Give the audience an idea, on an annual basis in 2025, how many
Mhm.
universities were you guys able to network through, and how many classes were you able to host in the year we just completed?
Yeah, so now as of the close of business in 25, we have 16 strategic partnerships. We've hosted over 60 classes in different time zones across the country. We're in every time zone, and our average class attendee is somewhere around 150 to 200 in signups on a pretty consistent basis, depending on how big the relationship is.
And give our audience a glimpse, if they were part of one of these alumni associations and were to receive this invitation,
Mhm.
what do they get to experience? They show up.
Mhm.
What does mortgage education look like from the
Mhm.
Jason Meda team? What do they get to
Yeah.
experience when they log into this class?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a safe educational environment. I think that's really important because we're not there to try to sell you on homeownership. We're trying to be a just a tool for you and a resource for you so they can ask questions in a safe environment, not feel like they're being sold. But they're going to get things like, credit improvement opportunities. They're going to get, what are some of the first time buyer programs that I didn't know about in my local communities? What's the workflow of buying a house? Let me understand a little bit more about terminology of loans and qualifying and some of the documents I might need to start the process. But it is an environment that is completely a learning environment and it's very interactive.
Wow, you're definitely giving me some inspiration here. This is exciting. So there is a marked difference between teaching online and in person. And I think some
Mhm.
of that is that feedback that you get, that
Yeah.
visual feedback. So for you, it sounds like it's translating really well, but that had to take some sort of adjustment. And so I'd like to just hear about how that's obviously there's been no change in your numbers, it's only grown.
Yeah.
But how are you still connecting with people on that tight level?
Yeah, well, I think we're trying to listen to our audience. So, asking for feedback, what are things that we can do better? I think we're always trying to kind of really be critical of the content that we're presenting and how it's hitting with our audience, and be willing to make adjustments. My colleague Ken and I are always trying to figure out like what are ways that we're missing, whether it's like, hey, we got to change that slide a little bit, or this is too redundant, let's not go there, or this isn't really like connecting with the audience like we should. Let's replace it with something else. And I think we're also being mindful of our audience's time too, because, you know, these classes, I got to give them really good content because I'm asking you to be a part of your evening with me for 45 minutes to an hour. So I got to make sure I bring it. And so, I think that's kind of where we're just making sure that we're there and, doing constant connection follow-ups with clients too afterwards. So if they do have questions when they leave a class, like it's just not like, here's the material, we'll see you sometime. No, we're here for you as an outlet. If something didn't just make sense for you or you have a personal situation that you're not comfortable asking in a classroom setting, let's talk offline.
All right, Jason, I want to take this almost a pivot point because the audience at this point might be concluding, okay, this guy is all in on teaching these classes, all in on the spirit of education, but they might miss a really critical piece of the story, which is in a very parallel universe, you are also leading your team really well, a team that has grown, a team that has very unique roles and responsibilities. And they're responsible for the folks that have raised their hand to say, okay, I actually think I am ready to be that home buyer. And I'd like you to actually help me with the transaction. And you're doing a heck of a lot of transactional volume as well. How do you translate your style as this thought leader, this educator into I'm also a producer, I'm also a team leader, and we've got to button down a pipeline at the same time? Is that a difficult transition for you, or did that just come naturally?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be at times depending on what the volume looks like. And, let's face it, not all transactions are smooth. I mean, there's things where I might have to get a little bit more involved in terms of like trying to find ways to maneuver with the financing and maybe make adjustments and stuff like that. So it is tough at times to make those adjustments. But I think, for me, it's all about my passion for helping the client. And I think it translates for me in everything I do. So if I'm helping that client, the education takes care of itself. The pipeline management, making sure that we're getting a client to the finish line as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And, leading to my team, like we're here to support that client. We're going to have an amazing client experience and just making sure that the client, our team understands that. I think just having that mindset, I think translates to all the areas that I need to be touching as part of our business.
Kathryn, I don't mean to keep drawing parallels here, but that, again, sounds like conversations we've had about you and your team and just that passion you have to understand the customer's perspective and really serve according to the needs they have. It's really fun to see that there are other folks that think like us, Kathryn.
Yay. I
Yay.
love that. It's fun to hear about. Okay, so now I'm going to change the perspective a little bit more.
Okay.
So you have so many people attending this class. You're leading this great team. It sounds like you kind of pour yourself into this. What do you see going forward? What's your future plans? What do the future classes look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we're really passionate about making sure that we have over 10,000 attendees in our classes throughout the year. So it's just really continuing to figure out ways to grow our educational base. And that includes, meeting with and having discussions with new strategic partnerships. So our goal is to add another 3 strategic partnerships this year. A lot of that comes just through our connections that we have in our communities right now. So we feel like we have a model that works. We know based upon X amount of signups, how many will show up and how many show ups will ultimately turn into consultations to help guide them down the path of homeownership. So we know it's replicatable and scalable. We just got to make sure that we're connecting with the right strategic partners that can help get us there. And I think also is just, our one of our big things this year is just our connectivity to attendees and just making sure that they know we're here not just as the educational launch pad for them, but kind of the life cycle of a client with us to go from educational setting to when the time is right, learning more about options, and then obviously when we decide to move forward in home ownership, that we're there as a partner for them.
All right, Jason, just for fun, just when life didn't seem full enough, let's remind the audience of this as well. You and Sophia are raising 2 beautiful little
Yeah,
girls.
yeah.
You are, as I said, a performance athlete, which means you've always got some sort of race or event that you're working toward. How do you manage such a full life? I mean, we branded our podcast Building Bigger Lives, and the
Yeah.
idea there was many of us miss out on the opportunity for a bigger life because we play small. You're not
Mhm.
playing small. So help inspire our audience how they might think bigger in order to experience so much more out of life because it's really fun. I mean, life's not
Yeah.
perfect, but you're really living a full life.
Yeah, no, I'm very grateful for the life we have. I mean, obviously, I can't do it without my partner with Sophia helping me be able to help manage things. I think we have a good we have a good partnership that we know what our strengths are and our areas of opportunity, and I think we complement each other really well. It's not easy, raising little kids right now, and but I think we do a good job of complementing each other. Um, but I think ultimately, like we're looking at, our travel goals and our health goals, finance goals, and all that stuff. We're really kind of making sure that we're locked in on that. We set, annual goals, quarterly goals, and we're talking about it on a weekly basis and trying to make sure we can effectively time manage with each other. We both have our own, fitness goals that we want to get through, and so we'll set our quarterly goals. These are the things we really want to do over the course of the quarter. We have disciplines that we manage through, just like we do in our business disciplines. And yeah, I mean, it's just, we have our 4 to 5 days of fitness that we're doing throughout the week. We juggle time, maybe she goes for a run and then I'm with the kids. And then we flip flop, or maybe I want to go to the driving range and hit some golf balls, and then we'll flip flop and then she'll go out for a bike ride. So it's just having that communication and well, first of all, it starts with expectation and goals of like what we want to accomplish, and then really communicating with each other about like how we're going to make it happen. So the business aspect is one component of my life, but the real important things, the things that I feel fulfilled with obviously come at home, and those, cannot be minimized or anything. Those take front and center for me. And I think I've learned over my time in my career, because I've given up a lot of personal stuff to try to get to my career to a certain level in my corporate days, that I missed out on a lot of things. And I told myself where I'm at in my career to now, I want to do what I'm really passionate about, which is serving my community, but I also want to make sure that's in balance with what I do for my family too. And I won't miss out on anything, whether it's a doctor's appointment with my daughter or if it's, going to see swim lessons. That's just far more important to me.
Oh, it's so true. It does go by so fast. So I'm glad that you're paying attention to that. I want to give some tips to our listeners. So, from your seat today, if you could, talk to Jason, who just started teaching these classes, or maybe
Yeah.
was about to start teaching these classes, what are some pieces of advice that you would give your younger self, or maybe that
Yeah.
younger LO that you're talking to today?
Yeah, well, I would say it's hard work. It takes a lot of like failing to get it right. You got to find the right formula that works for you and your presentation style. Whatever business you're in, it's not you can't go into it as this is a lead generation system for me. That's not what it's about. This is about giving to your community, providing value, and showing up every time and doing it consistently. And then the relationships with future clients will start to manifest. And so I think, in multiple industries, because I'm watching what's going out in communities with homebuyer education, or education, I should say, in general, I see so many people, do a big splash of a one-time education, and they probably didn't see any translation to client relationships or leads, and then they stop it. So I think it's the consistency and showing up as much as you need to, and whatever your frequency is of your workshop. And in this day and age, is providing really great, valuable content in this day of AI, where somebody can just, find out what they should need to know as a first-time buyer or any other purchase they're going to make. You need to make sure that you're different, and you're going to give them something that's very tangible that they can take and use for themselves.
Wow, that's really well said. And Kathryn, great question there, because I do want our audience to take away some practical things that they can apply from learning from Jason. And Jason, I just want to thank you. It's
Yeah.
so great getting to not only have you on today's episode, but just getting to walk with you. You're a really inspiring person, and it's great to see that we now have a platform in which to share that inspiration with a few more folks that we hope will join you on this journey of being passionate about the customer and their experience and their opportunities that come from actually owning a home. It's such a simple thing that I think is being somewhat dismissed in our current environment in our marketplace. And it's so great to see folks like you and Kathryn who are still standing firm on the idea that no, that if you understand what these things mean, you can leverage them and really provide a great future for you and your family. And I'm thankful that you're doing that. So thanks for being with us today, Jason. It's been great to have you.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. This is awesome. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Well, I'm going to put a wrap on today's episode of Building Bigger Lives. If you're out joining us each and every Wednesday on the platform of your choice, we thank you. We'd love your engagement. We love your comments when you join us on the social media platforms where we post these links. And please share an episode. If today's story with Jason was inspiring to you, it's probably going to be inspiring to someone else. And I hope you will share it with someone in your world. Please join us each and every Wednesday on that platform, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Building Bigger Lives again next week.